Welcome back to Luke the Trader, and today we have sort of a bit of a more relaxed video, and I just want to give my thoughts and essentially my opinion on the interview, as well as summarize some key points and just talk a little bit about the interview and what my takeaway was. So first of all, he was talking about Citibank and this relationship, and we can clearly see that it has just naturally formed through shareholders and seeing Citibank being involved basically in every transaction in the coal space, and this has helped them essentially to form a relationship in which they came together, and then finally Citibank taken over, and this has led to over 20 NDNAs. And unlike some people on co.ca who think that this also includes, let's say, banks and whatnot, it is virtually only steel companies and coal companies. And those steel and coal companies, they work together as they form a partnership to find out who will mine it. But also some steel companies are just considering to just own it outright instead of partnering up, as David said it. And the Canadian and Chinese relationships have improved, and so did also the Chinese and Indian relationships improve. So at least there's some tensioning in terms of politics, which is just really an unwanted side effect. And as David already mentioned, the state companies have more money than those that are, let's say, private or public companies. So there's definitely a lot of money available at the table. So there's a lot of tough competition, one could say. And one thing that just probably everybody struck as interesting is that plan B is plan A, because simply plan B would just be, let's say, selling one asset or just structuring a deal differently. And so, yeah, plan A is just, well, sell both assets to one company, and yeah, let's see when it goes through. And David was very confident in at least selling one asset or just structuring. So David is essentially, he thinks that the process is going very well. And actually he said that the last few months since October, we only had, let's say, positive news, be it BHP and so on, that one more positive news and a bid is on the table practically. That's what he said. And unfortunately, David can't give a guideline to a time frame that we want to have as a shareholder when we could expect something. He also can't just simply issue it, because it's not only a matter of just sticking to guidelines, but also he's not a wizard. He can't predict. I mean, if he could predict, he would probably just say it outright, but I highly doubt. And David states also that the process has started, and compared to the days with NEMI and Western Coal, we have triple or double the interest from suitors, so the amount of people who are effectively at the table. And this means we could quite possibly expect a rather high premium. And what is also more exciting is that those over 20 NDNAs, well, they're all done with their due diligence, and they're all still at the table. And there are just so many different suitors, be it Anglo, for example, which he mentioned that they essentially are sort of interesting in the way they look at us, which he mentioned in the interview. And the sales process in this end is open-ended. He said that it is not just simply, well, ticking off boxes, but it is open-ended, it is dynamic, things change. It is like a horse race, as he said. One day it's, let's say, horse number 4, the other day it's horse number 5, and then horse number 1, and then back to horse number 4. So there seems to be a lot of competition, and definitely for Colonial shareholders, we should be quite happy about it, given the lengthy amount of patience some of them having even been waiting for this for 6 years, and it seems like things are wrapping up, perhaps in 3, perhaps in 6 months, but it is definitely interesting to see the development. And David clearly shows that he just wants to get it over with, and in the process he just wants to simply get the best price. And at the beginning he will just accept what comes through the door, as long as it will help him get the final, let's say, $2 per ton or more. So there's definitely not this expectation, as some holders said, that, oh, the first bid needs to be $2 otherwise, and it will, yeah. Also, David, if he wanted to force the timeline, he would have, as he already stated. If it goes through him, he would just say 30 days bid and that's it. But unfortunately, it is not like that. And fortunately, we have Citibank on the table, who has done practically nearly all the deals, who is the main banker, and this is definitely interesting. So it is a big de-risking for any shareholder, and if it doesn't happen now, it will probably never happen, and that's just simply the way to look at things currently. And Anglo, the BHP thing, it has definitely highlighted us. In addition, it seems like every bidder just wants to have David in his team, which just shows that, the value is not only on the asset side of things, but also the team, which would help permit, which in this case, David has mentioned that a lot of permits have been going through, be it Murray River or any other company. So it seems like permitting, and it always seemed to me like rather a non-issue, which means that the issues must deflate, at least, let's say, with China or India, in some sense, at the political spectrum. And it also never crossed David's mind for a bidder to just simply wait out until the election is done, the Canadian election in this sense. So from this end, it can be said that by looking at this interview, I know David is confident, and he says oftentimes, let's say, he's very confident in interviews, and this time one could say that it seems really like 3 or 6 months is a appropriate timeline to say, okay, if it doesn't happen during that certain window, then is it even worth it for me as a Colonial shareholder to still be in there, as perhaps some shareholders might want to put a timeline essentially for themselves until when they will be invested in Colonial. So perhaps 3 to 6 months could be an appropriate timeline for those people out there. And overall, it is an exciting time to be a Colonial shareholder. And in this sense, what David is saying, it is very bullish. And it is actually, after just listening to it a couple of more times, it is very hard for me to pick out something negative and say, okay, this and that. So it is simply just the risk in itself in investing in Colonial. It's not a mine. It is just simply an asset. It's just simply, let's say, a mountain. And it's just some coal underground. And in this sense, it is just all the risk that is left over. And in conclusion, if anybody wants to invest in Colonial or has always been a little bit, I don't know if this is now the right time, perhaps seemingly the way David hints at it should be the best time to invest in it right now. And it is definitely an interesting development to look out for the next few months. And overall, it was a great interview, and I always appreciate talking with David, as I always have a great time with him. And he gives out some pretty educational stuff, especially about the coal market and the way it works. So that's it for today, and thanks for listening.